good morning, good afternoon, good day, good morrow, good everything to you. We're here for Tending Towards Life once again with an extraordinary source by the wonderful Rosemary Whatola Trommer. And she this time is inspired by the wonderful Maya Stein, who we've also had here between us, Justin. So I'm feeling like they're both here, which is really wonderful for this source. And if you're new here, essentially what happens is we take something wonderful that either Justin or I have chosen. I'm Lizzie, by the way, if you haven't met me before. And we bring it between us and see where it takes us in terms of our conversation. And we've been doing this for a very long, good while. And people tell me, Justin, it's quite unusual for a podcast to last this long. So I'm impressed with us and excited by the kind of aliveness that's here. That means we haven't gone, oh, this is boring and we don't want to do it. If anything, it's getting better and better and more people are coming to be with us in this. And it's a real wonder. And I want to just name that people are really now coming to be with us in person, as in online. We have our Turning Towards Life live seasons happening. We're on season 2 and we've got season 3 starting in September. And it is such a wonder, Justin, that people have joined us in the practice and in community in this real, actual way. And so where it was most exciting to receive an email or a message or a cup of coffee from someone on the support button on our website, it's now become extremely exciting to sit and be with people in person in our Zoom room together. And it's such an incredible thing that's come from us doing this for all this time. So I'm really grateful to everybody who's in current season 2, which is on power. And season 3 is going to be on love. And then we're going to have season 4, which Justin, you named maybe as time last time we were together, which is going to be wonderful. So I want to invite everybody to go to turningtowards.life and see whether you'd like to join us for season 3, which starts in September. We would so love to have you. And so far, we've just had the most glorious time, haven't we, Justin, meeting everyone and saying hello in real life. And it's a real wonder. So if you would like to join us, it's a very safe, loving, warm, and inspiring place that gathers monthly online in a time that works for most time zones. And I'm just feeling an appreciation of that today, and how this project, Justin, has taken on a life, a self, and we are now just ushering the self forth or something and asking people to join in with us. So we're going to head into this source together, which you can always find in the show notes of whatever podcast platform you're listening on. And you can go to our website, turningtowards.life, and sign up for the episodes to come into your inbox each week, because Justin is extremely technical and very clever, so he can just make that happen. So that happens. You can also support us on our website if you would like to, and we love to receive emails. So please email us on hello@turningtowards.life, and we will always reply and come back to you and appreciate you and be glad to be in contact. And now we're going to head into a great shining, apparently.
Well, I'm going to say hello as well. Hello, Lizzie. I love what you said. Good morrow to everyone. That was
Don't even know what that means.
fantastic language. It's actually very sweet. Just taking a moment before we go into source, just to acknowledge, Lizzie, you spoke so beautifully and welcomingly to anyone who might maybe be landing with us for the first time, hearing this or seeing this. And sometimes I forget, because we've been doing this for so long, that of course that is often what happens, because somebody tells somebody, oh, I think you'd enjoy this, or you'd benefit from this, or it would be holding for you, or whatever it is, that people are joining us. So hello, those of you who are joining us. And we have been doing this for 8, I think this is right, Lizzie, 8.5 years. You know, it's been long enough that I forget how many years it is. I think we will be at our 9th year in the autumn. And what you said about podcasts that last and don't last, my understanding of this is that what we've been doing is doing this for its own sake. We've been doing this because it is of value in itself. We've not been in the situation of trying to figure out how do we make a thing and sort of polish it up so that it fits some existing categories. We wanted to do something generous that would be of value to lots of people and would also touch us deeply. So it's been excellent to be doing this all this time and to feel faithful towards it in this way. And faithfulness and practice is something we've talked about so many times. So here we are about to enter into this practice where we put the source from Rosemary, inspired by Maya, both of whom we know and admire and cherish and have benefited from their work so much. We're going to put that in the center and we'll read it. And then we'll let an very unhurried conversation arise between us. And I'm saying that for us and for all of you who are with us, whether you've heard us say this, 800 times or one time. But also because I think, Lizzie, there's practices that might come from everyone who's listening here that's possible. So one is you could take a source like this and share it with people you love and have this kind of conversation. You could invite them into practice by sharing this conversation with them. But I think there are also practices of listening. So we know that people listen in different ways to this conversation that we're in. You might be mowing the lawn or drifting off to sleep or walking or in the car or sitting quietly. And you could bring, if you're listening, you could see what it's like to bring that kind of open-hearted attention to the conversation where you don't have to figure it out, but you can let yourself enter into the inside of the conversation, which is what we do, and enter into the inside of the source and see how it moves around inside you and between us and you as you listen. I think that's probably the spirit for this. So as you said, Lizzie, this source is in the show notes and on the website. You can also find it on Rosemary Whatola Trommer's website, and she has a daily email that you can sign up to where you get a poem from her every day. It's really excellent because she's such a brilliant writer. And this was one of those. So this is called A Great Shining. It's inspired by a 10-line poem by Maya Stein. Also search out Maya and sign up to receive her poetry in your inbox, which I'm going to very heartily recommend. And so this is now a 10-line poem by Rosemary. What if, in this moment, every person on earth thinks of someone who makes us feel cherished, known, safe? What if we let ourselves linger in this moment of connection? What might happen inside each body? What might happen in the world as in unison our breaths begin to even and slow? Would the pulsing of our hearts begin to sync the way heart cells in a petri dish come to keep time with each other? What is Earth if not a great experiment in which we are all both observer and observed? How long could it last, this rhythmic communion between jailer and prisoner, oppressor and oppressed, between fighter and fighter, maker and destroyer, parent and child, liar and believer, all of us thinking love? Foolish, perhaps, to imagine such impossible moments, but more foolish not to imagine such things. Even now, I'm thinking of someone. It feels like the moon is inside me.
Thank you, Justin. A Great Shining. What if in this moment, every person on earth thinks of someone who makes us feel cherished, known, safe? What if we let ourselves linger in this moment of connection? What might happen inside each body? What might happen in the world as in unison our breaths begin to even and slow? Would the pulsing of our hearts begin to sync the way heart cells in a petri dish come to keep time with each other? What is Earth if not a great experiment in which we are all both observer and observed? How long could it last, this rhythmic communion between jailer and prisoner, oppressor and oppressed, between fighter and fighter, maker and destroyer, parent and child, liar and believer, all of us thinking of love? Foolish perhaps to imagine such impossible moments, but more foolish not to imagine such things. Even now I'm thinking of someone. It feels like the moon is inside me.
Thank you, Lizzie. I'm so moved by that last sentence, I have to say. This feels incredibly important to me. I'm appreciative that Rosemary names that there's a sense in which it might be foolish to imagine such things, but more foolish not to. And partly where I want to start my response is in the importance of imagination. I wonder whether one of the things that's happening in our sort of public sphere, you know, if you come across news media or social media, if what we suffer from is a kind of absence of imagination, or what we feel is we feel all of the turmoil and we can feel all of the contraction everywhere, and we can feel the way that we people are polarizing and dividing ourselves into right and wrong, good and bad, us and them. There's so much distancing happening in our public culture in so many ways. And of course, it shapes us everywhere. If we start to feel that, if we start to walk around the world as if everything and everyone is a threat all the time, if that's all we can imagine, this is why I think imagination is so important. There's the things that are happening, and then there's our imagination. And if we treat imagination as somehow optional or arbitrary or foolish, all we're left with is responding to whatever is going on by what comes at us immediately. And that the imagination is what it takes. I think it's the central human faculty, actually, that we're not just responding to like cold, hard fact, because there's very little of that. I mean, there is that, but there's everything else that we add to it. To be human is to imagine, and to imagine worlds and possibilities that are here in principle and could yet be born by how we attend to them. So I'm so glad for Rosemary to talk to us about how foolish it is not to imagine. It's a real mistake. So then what might we imagine? Because we're actually imagining so much and all the time. So then to imagine what it is to be held in the attention of someone who makes us feel cherished and known and safe, and then to extend that to others, to the ones that we can't even imagine beginning extending. What an imagination that is. Because I think we know where things lead if we keep pursuing the story that everyone is to be afraid of and everybody is to be defeated. Everybody is either a winner or loser, to be won over or lost to, and we have to fight it out until we know who the victors are. I know where that leads. It doesn't lead to good places. So some people might say that Rosemary's poem is sort of like irrelevant in a hard world. And I want to say this is central. This is what it takes for us to learn to live well with our families and our friends and our colleagues and our communities and the people across the street who are different from us and the people around the other side of the world who are different from us. And I'm just imagining what it is. Imagine Rosemary's invitation. Imagine just a moment in which this happened. Like, what would it be to work towards, to play our part in working towards our part in this? It's magical, but also necessary.
Mm. So, Justin, as you were reading and in this theme of necessariness, I did what Rosemary was imagining, as in, I thought of someone who makes me feel cherished. And actually, I couldn't make it very far past the word cherished without being completely taken in my imagination. But it's funny, I think imagination, to me anyway, has felt like a kind of a world out there or something. And part of it is that. But when I imagined the person who cherishes me the cherishment, my whole body changed. So I felt like a flutter in my chest and a kind of a breath and a smile on my face and a kind of aliveness in me. And that was just, not even to the end of the first sentence of just imagine, think of someone who makes me feel cherished. So I'm in appreciation of how powerful our imagination is on our actual direct experience in our bodies. And so whilst most of the content in the world that seems to be served to us is calling on our imaginativeness that doesn't bring good feelings in our bodies, although there is a lot of good news in the world, nobody's actually talking about it. I'm feeling the importance of Rosemary's clarity and creativity, which is, I'm imagining Rosemary knows what's going on in the world, but she still has this deep dedication to this. It's not that this comes from a place of naivety or not knowing what's happening. It's coming right alongside that and saying, I still stand for connection and cherishing and love and safety and knownness and community. I still stand there, even though all of this is happening. And I stand for it even more because all of this is happening in a way as well. So having the world be invited by this beautiful, great, shining poem into the wondering of cherishment, cherishingness, feels like one way that Rosemary's exercising her power as a human being in the world. And it's meaningful and it's significant and really, really important. And I'm really grateful for that. I'm grateful for that stand and that we get to stand right there as well. It's beautiful.
So I really appreciate what you're saying about imagination, Lizzie, that it's both inside us and outside us at the same time. That as we imagine a state of affairs in the world that may actually already be in some way, that there might be some of it, even if we can't see it, it changes what happens in us. And I think that's actually the most important starting place in Rosemary's poem. What I noticed as you were talking is that what Rosemary invites us into here is, what if in this moment every person on earth thinks of someone who makes us feel cherished and known and safe, and let ourselves linger in that, what might happen inside us, and then what might happen in the world. So this is so different from if I'm there is another move here that's not the one that Rosemary is naming here actually, which is that if I'm in a difficulty with you or a conflict with you, that I somehow find the goodness in you or the sacredness in you, which I think is a really important move. But sometimes that's very hard when we feel frightened and alone and activated and vigilant about what might happen, or if we're in a position where there's harm happening or something. So Rosemary's invitation is more like letting something in from behind, which is what if each person were to, for a moment, remember that they're not alone, that there will be somebody, even if there's only one person in our lives around whom we feel cherished. What happens if, in this moment, and I'm doing this now, I let myself feel behind me and around me anybody who I know cherishes me and knows me, anybody around who, and I can feel it as I'm talking to you. Really, I mean, it's really something that my breath is slowing and my heart is, I've got warmth inside me and I'm settling and I'm imagining it's like a doorway in the back of between my shoulder blades is open and that's where I'm letting people in. And I wonder if so much of what has us be contracted, in a way, one way of talking about our sort of big world situation where it's not working out so well is that we're, and also what's in our families, in our friendships, in our communities, where we contract away from ourselves, like we pull away from life and then we're left feeling terrified and unresourced and undisconnected, and it's no wonder we want to sort of thrash around. That letting ourselves feel the imagination of being cherished, the person doesn't have to be here, is, as I'm talking to you, is bringing me back in contact with the flow of life itself. I feel here, and I feel so much less separate. And I can also feel how love and cherishing and knowing and beholding is such a deep central part of what it is to be a human. I think it's probably the primary something. I think it probably comes before, in some ways, all the other things that we're up to. So in a way, what Rosemary is asking us to imagine is to use our imaginative hearts and minds and bodies to find our way back into belonging in this world, and opening our wish to take care of the world and one another, rather than our wish to run and flee and panic and scream and distance and fight. And last thing to say about it is, it's not just an idle imagining, because where's Rosemary saying we find it? We find it in our relationships with other people. We don't have to do our finding our way back, remembering our way of being in the world. I don't have to summon it up by effort. Like, oh, I have to. Actually, all it takes is, okay, so I'm thinking of a person who I know cherishes me if I'm willing to let myself feel it, which is important to do, and I'm settling and I belong somewhere now. So now being with you and speaking in public to all the hello everyone, all the hundreds of people who are listening, is a completely different premise, all because of an act of imagination that, like all good imagination, is tied into what's real.
Mm-hmm. So, Justin, I noticed at the beginning of the part when you were speaking now how happy I felt when you were feeling cherished by the people that cherish you. So feels like there's the individual thing of when I imagine myself as cherished, all those bodily things that I was talking about happen, and I feel connected and hopeful and warm and all of that. And then I experienced a rising joy in me when you talked about the people at your back who cherish you and how you were feeling. So I think it's also a matter of where we can really feel and see our non-separateness. In that, for you to feel cherished is for me to feel joy at your being cherished. And so it feels like it has a kind of a ripple effect too, that you're feeling held that way has me feel joyful about you being held, as well as, of course, when I'm held and cherished, I have my own joy. And I feel like somehow all of this, and it's such a strange connection to make, but I'm making it, this is why I watch the news a little bit and I seek for many other things a lot, which means I know what's happening, but I can tell and feel committed to being a creative force in the world that has far more expressions of love and joy in my life than I do of the impact of imagining and feeling the terror and the misery and the fear. Because it's easy to feel them, it's easy to, that principle of it takes 20 years to build something and 4 seconds to knock it down. Something that comes from violence is kind of so easy and immediate. Something that comes from fear. And it takes real commitment and dedication and intentionality to build that in me which is loving, that in me which is generous, given the way that the world is going and what the bombardment that I could expose myself to every day if I just did what's expected of us as human beings, which is to consume a lot of media all the time or whatever. And it's not that I don't know what's going on, but I do know that if I let that have me, my creativity in the way that Rosemary's talking to us here in Maya too, all of that which we're building a world of cherishing is diminished in some way in me. So I'm feeling really committed again, recommitted to knowing what kind of imagination I'm building and what kind of experiential impact that has on me in terms of what I build and what I am imagining in the world. So to be one who does this thing, thinking of someone who cherishes me and wandering around the world as cherished, is a really different thing than wandering around the world as separate and alone. And it makes me, as you're saying, Justin, very different with the experiences that come my way, with the people that come my way. So as I walk out into the world as cherished, I feel curious. I'm just imagining it now. I feel curious. I feel like I long to connect, like I'm going to probably speak to people. I'm going to be generous. I'm going to wonder about people and ask some questions and be engaged. Whereas if I wander into the world with my head down and my body kind of in on itself and not. And of course, there are circumstances that might have me be that way, which is fine because that happens. But the intentionality to build that cherishedness and that connectedness has a massive impact on the world. And I feel really recommitted to that by listening and feeling to what Rosemary's bringing us.
I'm really struck, Lizzie, by the pathways opening up for me in hearing you talk about the choices you make about what you'll pay attention to and what you won't. That, how much news, for example. What I think Rosemary is inviting us into is an act of imagining that there might be other ways to engage with our lives than the ones that we are given or have taken on automatically. So there's lots of different forms for that. And one is to notice if I expose myself to this, this, and this, or engage with the world in that, and that way, I become more contracted, more frightened, more pulled away, more anxious, more. And if I allow this, this, and this to have some place in my life, I feel myself softening and I'm kinder and maybe truer and more courageous. And so it invites the question about our capacity to imagine what pathways we might walk, how we might practice, how we might direct our attention, what we might open ourselves to, that will have us be the kind of people that we long to be in the world. It opens up that. And it also, I've had a bit of an insight whilst you were talking that often we then run into the mistake of talking about this in a behaviorist way. So I go, well, Lizzie, you've read this poem. Now you're not being kind to me like the way I want you to be kind. You must be failing to be what Rosemary's opening up. And I think that thinking about behavior is the wrong place to look at it. I think that the place to look at it is what gets to grow inside us because of the choices we make. So we don't all have choices about what we're exposed to and what we're not. People have different degree of choice around that. But where we do have choice, Rosemary's words are an invitation for us to exercise that choice. Your words are. And where we don't have choice about what the world brings to us, we still have this. And this, I think, is really amazing. Is that I might be in the midst of an incredibly difficult argument or disagreement with you, Lizzie. I'm not, but I'm imagining I'm sitting here and there might be some terrible power imbalance between us where one of us has lots of power and one of us doesn't, and there's not much room to move, and maybe there's hurt or even harm happening. Even there, we have choices about what of us we might find a way to attend to, even when we're in something really hard. And I think that's what's so important, that your way of talking is leading me into. This is so far from the sort of shiny Instagram version of, self-care or something. What we're being asked of here by Rosemary is an imaginative act in the midst of the difficulty and suffering and proper complexity of the world, that might put us more in contact with our capacity to love in the midst of things. And that is that's our responsibility, that's our possibility. And she's reminding us that we're never alone in it, because there are always others.
And I think, Justin, that's an essential thing for me that I'm seeing is that this dedication to connection makes a massive difference in the wider world. So it happens on this level of you and I connecting like this, talking to one another, listening to one another, like we do, connects me to the world in a whole different way. But then when we get into community, we've been talking about community between us, Justin, a lot recently. And I just feel this ever deepening commitment to creating spaces of community for people, which of course Turning Towards Life Live is one. And every other thing that allows connection and depth of conversation and being with one another and the cherishing of one another. When we cherish one another and we appreciate one another, everything changes. Very different things become possible. And, talking about choice, I know that my choices are entirely different when I'm connected and feel intimate with the world and myself and other people. My choices about what I say are different. My choices about what I do are different. My choices about where I put my body are really different. My awareness is different of what's real and what's true. And so my actions change depending on how connected I am and how in community I feel. And that just feels really, really real right now as we're saying it.
Parting thought, Lizzie, to me is a big part of this is that we've talked about so many times is being right-sized in the world. Is that when we are too small or too big, we tend to, we're too small, too frightened, too contracted, or too big, like too dominating. It's very, very hard for us to resolve the difficulties and challenges and to meet one another. And it's very difficult to meet somebody else and to really cherish them unless we are also allowing ourselves to feel this that Rosemary is asking of us. Like to cherish you from a position of knowing myself as belonging in the world so that I can take up just human dignified size with you, I think is part of the doorway here. And I wanted to, what you said awoke that in me, that really this is Rosemary's words. When we feel like the moon is inside us, we can feel our own fullness and then we can feel it in others. I'm thinking of someone, it feels like the moon is inside me. What a line. It's amazing. Thank you, Lizzie, for being in this conversation. And thank you everyone for being with us. What a joy it is. I know why we keep doing this, Lizzie. I know why we haven't stopped. 449 weeks in to this conversation. And all of you who are with us, thank you, thank you, thank you. And please feel very welcome, even encouraged to share a conversation like this with somebody, send them the link or point them to the website or sign them up to the email or something. Because we know that this kind of conversation and this kind of poetry, which of course we're sharing, really matters. That's part of the project here, is to share the work of excellent, extraordinary humans who are really doing the work of writing what will be of benefit to the world. So thank you, everyone, and all being well, we will see you next week.